Okay, so we're diving into this DaddyOFive YouTube channel stuff. And wow, there's a lot here.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of videos and
Well,
transcripts.
and it seems like people are really concerned about the way the parents,
The Martins.
yeah, Mike and Heather Martin,
Mm.
were treating their kids,
Right.
like all their kids,
Yeah.
biological and stepchildren.
Yeah, it's a blended family, right? So we have to look at how everyone was treated.
Exactly, and it seems like this whole thing blew up a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, huge controversy.
Yeah, with those accusations of, like, child abuse, but disguised as pranks.
Right, and that's going to be a big part of what we look at, I think.
Definitely, because it's not always clear, where's the line,
Yeah, where's the line between a harmless prank and something that's actually damaging?
especially for kids.
Especially for kids, because they're still developing. They don't always understand the nuances.
Right, and we have so many different perspectives to consider here.
We do.
Like we have the commentators, obviously, and even Mike Martin himself.
Yeah, he's given interviews and stuff.
Yeah, and then we even have stuff from Rose Hall.
Oh, right, the biological mother of Cody and Emma.
Yeah, exactly. So
Sure.
we're going to try to unpack all of that and see what we can learn.
It's going to be fascinating to see how this all played out.
Yeah, like how did this family who seems so, happy and normal in their early videos.
Right, like your typical family vlog.
Yeah, end up in this huge controversy with accusations of child abuse.
Right, and how did the internet react to all of this?
Yeah, because the internet played a huge role in this whole thing.
Definitely.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay, sounds good.
Who are the Martins? Give us the rundown of this family.
Okay, so we have Mike and Heather Martin, and they had a blended family of 5 kids total.
Right.
So Mike had 2 children from a previous relationship, Cody and Emma,
Right.
and Heather had 3 sons from a previous marriage, Jake, Ryan, and Alex.
Okay, so 5 kids in total.
Yeah, and they started this DaddyOFive channel back in 2015.
Okay.
And initially it was pretty standard family vlog stuff.
Like vacations and holidays?
Yeah, exactly. Holidays, birthday parties, just everyday life stuff.
The kind of stuff that makes you go, look at this happy family.
Exactly, but then things start to shift, and we're going to have to look at that shift in detail.
Yeah, because we have all those video titles, like kid gets a whooping and dad destroys kid's Xbox One.
Yeah, and even dad punches kid in the face. Like, how did they go from, happy family vlogs to that?
Right, and that seems to have started around, like, July 2016.
Yeah, that's when Mike tweeted about pranking one of his kids, and it seems like that's when their content took a darker turn.
And then those titles definitely suggest it escalated quickly.
For sure. Like, these titles are pretty aggressive, even if they were just pranks.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Where do you draw the line between a harmless prank and something that's actually damaging?
Exactly, especially when you're talking about kids.
Right, because they don't always understand the difference between what's real and what's fake.
And when you look at how their content evolved, a disturbing pattern emerges.
Okay, I'm interested to hear about this pattern.
Particularly in how Mike and Heather interacted with Cody.
One of Mike's biological children.
Yeah, it's like he was the target of many of those more intense pranks.
Yeah, it's unsettling how he seemed to be singled out, not only in the videos themselves, but even in the titles.
Exactly. Like, were they consciously or unconsciously exploiting a particular family dynamic for views?
Right, like did they see that Cody got a reaction and they just went with it because it got them more attention?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely something to consider.
And to make things even more complex, Cody was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, or ODD.
Right, and that can make it difficult for kids to manage their emotions and behavior.
So how much of Cody's behavior in the videos was a genuine reaction versus a symptom of his ODD?
It's a really blurred line, and
Yeah.
without knowing the family personally, it's impossible to say for sure.
Right. But it's important to think about the impact of a diagnosis like ODD on both the child and the family.
Yeah, it adds a whole other layer to this situation.
And we can't ignore the fact that one video in particular seemed to be a major turning point, the invisible ink prank.
Oh, yeah, that one really sparked the controversy, and for good reason.
So what happened in this video?
Well, Heather basically smeared ink all over Cody's room,
Oh.
and then she and Mike started screaming at him for supposedly making the mess.
Even if it was fake, that seems pretty intense.
Oh, it was, and you can see in the video that Cody is clearly distressed. He's crying and denying that he did it.
It would be good to actually hear what this prank sounded like.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, let's play the clip.
Okay.
So last we left off, the Martins were convicted of child neglect and sentenced to probation.
Right.
And you would think that would be the end of it.
You'd think so, but not quite.
So what happened? Did they try to come back online?
Well, they did try to make a comeback.
Wow, really? So even after everything?
Yeah. And this is where their story gets even more complex.
Yeah, especially when you consider the impact on their other kids.
Jake, Ryan, and Alex.
Right? Heather's biological sons, because they weren't the primary targets of the pranks,
No, they weren't.
like Cody was,
Uh,
but they were still living in that same environment.
right. They were exposed to those same dysfunctional dynamics.
So even though the Martins supposedly learned their lesson,
Well, that's what they said.
it seems like they continued those same patterns of behavior even with the restrictions from the court.
Yeah, the court ordered them to have no contact with Cody and Emma unless it was approved.
Right. And they couldn't post any content with those kids on social media.
Exactly. So no more exploiting Cody and Emma for views.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But what about the other 3 kids?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay. I'm all ears.
So less than a month after losing custody of Cody and Emma, they launched 2 new channels.
Oh, wow. So they didn't waste any time.
Nope, not at all.
What were the channels called?
Family of 5 and Family of 5 Gaming.
So just a rebrand. Same content, different name.
Well, they tried to spin it as them being the target of the jokes this time.
Oh.
But viewers quickly noticed it was more of the same.
Like what kind of stuff?
A lot of yelling, the kids were visibly distressed, and there was just this general sense of chaos.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, very reminiscent of the DaddyOFive days.
So did they get any pushback?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was pushback from viewers and critics.
But I'm guessing they also had supporters?
They did. They managed to retain a lot of their fan base who defended them and dismissed any concerns.
It's crazy how people can be so loyal to these online personalities, even when they do questionable things.
It's like they're blind to their flaws.
Yeah, like they've formed this connection with them and they can't see them objectively anymore.
It's a fascinating phenomenon.
So were these new channels successful? Did they rebuild their audience?
Surprisingly, yes. They gained traction pretty quickly.
Really?
And it seemed like they were almost on track to reach the same level of popularity as DaddyOFive.
Wow. But I bet YouTube was watching them closely this time.
Oh, yeah, they were. And in July 2018, both Family of 5 and Family of 5 Gaming were terminated.
For violating YouTube's terms of service.
You got it back to square one?
You'd think they'd get the message at this point.
You would, but they weren't done yet.
Of course not. They always find a way.
And this is where it gets tricky, because even when they're deplatformed, they find ways to bypass those restrictions.
Okay, so what do they do this time?
They launched their own website, officialfamilyof5.com.
So they went independent.
Yep. And they started posting videos there, but behind a paywall.
Wow, so they created their own platform completely independent of YouTube.
Exactly. Talk about dedication.
So did they address the controversy on their website?
They did. Heather posted a statement called The Truth and Lies of DaddyOFive.
And what did she say?
She offered an apology of sorts, but ultimately framed it as a misunderstanding.
So blaming everyone else.
Pretty much she blamed the internet and the people who criticized them.
Classic deflection tactic.
Exactly, trying to control the narrative and play the victim.
But I bet people weren't buying it.
No, not really. The pressure kept mounting, and ultimately Child Protective Services stepped in.
So what happened?
In April 2017, Cody and Emma were removed from the Martins' home.
And placed back into Rose's custody.
Yep, finally, after years of fighting.
That must have been a huge relief for Rose.
I'm sure it was. But what about Mike and Heather? Did they face any legal consequences?
Yeah, what happened to them?
Well, in July 2017, they were charged with 2 counts of child neglect.
Wow. So this wasn't just online outrage anymore. This was serious.
It was, and the prosecution had to prove that their actions, even the pranks, constituted neglect.
Which probably wasn't easy given that family vlogging was still relatively new at the time.
Exactly, and they had to prove that those actions caused actual harm to Cody and Emma.
So what was the outcome?
In September 2017, both Mike and Heather were convicted of misdemeanor neglect charges.
And what was their sentence?
They were sentenced to 5 years of supervised probation.
5 years? That's a long time.
It was a landmark case in many ways.
Yeah, it really highlighted the consequences of exploiting children online, even under the guise of entertainment.
And it showed that the law was starting to catch up with the digital world.
So justice was served, the Martins learned their lesson, and everyone moved on, right?
Well, not exactly.
There's more. You're kidding.
This is where the story takes another unexpected turn.
Oh boy. Of course it does.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, they may have lost custody of 2 of their kids and faced legal repercussions,
Right.
but their desire for online attention didn't go away.
It seems like they just couldn't resist the camera.
It's almost like a psychological puzzle.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the motivations behind their actions.
And the role of the internet in all of this.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time with this DaddyOFive stuff.
Yeah.
And it's clear that this is about way more than just one family's YouTube channel.
Definitely. It really shows how family dynamics and the desire for fame online.
And the ethics of using your kids for content.
Exactly. All those things are tangled up together.
Yeah. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should consider what happened to everyone in the long run.
The lasting impact for sure.
So let's start with Cody and Emma.
Okay.
They were the main targets of the abuse, right?
It seems that way.
And they clearly went through a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
So what do we know about their lives after they left the Martins?
Well, Rose, their biological mother, has talked about it some.
Oh,
You know, she's described the challenges they face, the therapy, and the scars they're still dealing with.
yeah.
It hasn't been easy, but it seems like they're on the road to recovery.
Wow, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
It really shows their resilience and strength.
it does.
And it reminds us that even after trauma and really tough times,
Mm-hmm.
there's always hope for healing.
Definitely.
But it's also a reminder that child abuse can have effects that last a long time.
Right, even after the abuse stops.
Yeah, the emotional and psychological stuff can take years to heal.
Absolutely, sometimes even decades.
And what about the other three kids?
Jake, Ryan, and Alec,
Yeah, they stayed with the Martins, right?
they did through the whole thing.
So what do we know about what they went through?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have much information.
It's too bad.
Yeah, we know they kept showing up in the Martins videos.
Even after Cody and Emma left.
Even after everything, yeah.
Wow.
But it's really hard to say what their lives were like when the cameras were off.
And whether they experienced the same kind of emotional problems.
Exactly. It's really disturbing to think about.
Yeah, it's like they were stuck in this place where all this messed up behavior was normal.
And even celebrated, right? Like it was part of their brand.
Yeah, exactly.
It really shows how complex emotional abuse and neglect are.
And how hard it is to see the full impact on kids.
Especially when it's subtle, you know?
Yeah.
And hidden behind family stuff.
So have Mike and Heather shown any real remorse?
Especially toward Cody and Emma.
Yeah. Have they actually owned up to what they did?
It's tough to say they've made apologies publicly,
Oh, okay.
but they often frame it in a way that deflects the blame.
So they still see themselves as victims.
It seems that way, like they were victims of online harassment.
It's hard to know what they're really thinking.
Yeah. Or do they get it? Do they understand the harm they caused?
It's unsettling because we don't really know.
It really is. It leaves us with more questions than answers.
So what does all this tell us about society? You know, about our relationship with technology.
And a responsibility to protect children.
Yeah. What can we learn from this whole DaddyOFive mess?
Well, it makes us confront some hard truths.
Like what?
Like how powerful the desire for internet fame is.
And how the line between public and private gets blurred.
Exactly. And how easily exploitation can look like entertainment.
It makes you wonder what we'll accept for entertainment.
And how much content we consume without thinking about the harm it might be causing.
So we need more awareness then.
Definitely. And better rules and safeguards.
And a commitment to protecting kids.
Both online and offline.
This DaddyOFive case might not be in the news anymore,
True.
but the lessons are still so important.
Couldn't agree more.
It reminds us to think critically.
To be aware of the ethical stuff.
And to take responsibility for protecting kids.
Yeah, especially the vulnerable ones.
So as we wrap up this DaddyOFive deep dive,
Okay.
we want you to keep talking about this stuff
Share your thoughts for sure.
and work towards making the internet a better place for everyone.
Especially for kids.
Well, this has been quite the journey.
It has.
Eye-opening, thought-provoking, and honestly pretty disturbing at times.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's also been a good reminder.
Of what's really important.
Yeah, like critical thinking and ethical awareness.
And our shared duty to protect those who need it most.
So we've covered a lot.
We have.
The Martins' rise to fame, their downfall, their attempts to come back.
And the impact on their kids.
And we talked about family vlogging and internet fame.
And how to hold people accountable online.
And most importantly, we talked about protecting children online.
That's the key takeaway.
So we're going to wrap up our deep dive into DaddyOFive here. Thanks for joining us. It's been tough. But hopefully it gives us all a sense of purpose. A purpose to make the world better for ourselves and future generations.
Shouldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for listening, everyone.